My name is Evelyn Parker. I am 67 years old. I live in a small apartment over a bakery on Maple Street. I used to be a nurse. I took care of people for many years. I like hot tea, quiet mornings, and making apple pies. My hands are not fast anymore, but they are steady. I believe in kindness. I believe that when people are cruel, you don't have to be cruel back. You let the world see who they are, and you let the truth shine like a porch light in the dark. I have one child, my son, Tyler. I raised him alone after his father passed away when Tyler was 12. We made it through with coupons, hand-me-down coats, and a lot of prayers said in whisper voices. Today, Tyler is grown. He works in tech sales. He wears nice suits. He has a wife named Madison. She is very pretty. She likes big parties and bigger pictures for social media. They have a son, my sweet grandson, Liam. He just turned 7 today. He has a smile that looks like sunshine after rain. He is the reason I keep going. Now, I will tell you the highest peak, the big moment, the part that made my heart shake like a loose window in a storm. It happened in the middle of Liam's birthday party. The house was full of balloons, blue and gold, and there was a big sign in the hallway that said, "Lucky 7." People laughed and took pictures. There was a table covered in gifts, boxes with shiny bows, and cards lined up like little houses in a row. I had an envelope in my hand. I had written for Liam on the front in my best neat letters. I was walking toward the gift table when Madison stepped in front of me. She kept her smile wide for the camera, but her eyes were sharp. She leaned close to my ear so no one else could hear and said very soft, "Evelyn, would you mind waiting in the kitchen during the party? You embarrass us." The music in the living room kept playing. The guests kept laughing. But inside me, everything went quiet. For a second, I could not feel my feet. I could not feel my hands. I thought about the nights I stayed awake with baby Tyler when he had a fever, the days I walked to work in the snow because we needed rent money, and the mornings I read books to little Liam when Madison was busy picking out party themes. I stood very still. I gave Madison the same gentle smile I always used when a patient said something unkind from pain or fear. "Of course," I said. My voice did not shake. "Of course, dear." I walked to the gift table. I put the envelope down where everyone could see it. I pressed it flat with my palm, as if it were a quilt square that needed to lie just right. Then I turned and walked to the door. I did not make a scene. I did not cry. I picked up my coat from the hook. I opened the door and stepped outside. The sun was bright. The sidewalk was warm. I took one breath, then another, and from inside the house, I heard a voice cry out high and shocked. I heard chairs scrape. Feet ran. The front door slapped open against the wall. People rushed to the doorway, faces pale, mouths wide. "Evelyn! Wait, Grandma! Please come back." Multiple voices now. Tyler's voice. Madison's voice. Even Madison's mother. "Evelyn, don't go. Please." I kept walking down the porch steps, my heart beating hard. The word please fluttering behind me like a loose ribbon in the wind. Why were they begging? What did they see? What did they finally understand? I will tell you, but not yet. Let me go back to where this story began. Before the cake, before the whisper, before the envelope lay on that table like a tiny, quiet storm. 3 weeks earlier, I was in my apartment with a needle, thread, and a light blue dress from the thrift store. The dress was too long for me, so I hemmed it while a gospel station hummed low on the radio. I wanted to look nice for Liam's birthday. I could not afford the fancy brand names Madison liked, but I could make simple things look neat. I pressed the hem with the iron. I brushed my shoes. I set them by the door. The phone rang. It was Tyler. "Hey, Mom," he said, "Madison's going big for Liam this year. Backyard party, magician, Photo booth. You know how she is. I know, I said. What can I bring? A pause. I could hear him cover the phone and whisper to someone. A muffled voice came back. Then Tyler cleared his throat. Maybe just bring yourself, Mom. Madison's got the food covered. Okay, I said. I'll make cookies anyway. Liam likes the ones with the big chocolate chips. Another pause. Maybe don't worry about baking. We're doing a brand-sponsored dessert table. It's complicated. I swallowed. All right, I'll just bring a card. Great, Tyler said, relief slipping into his voice. Thanks, Mom. Love you. Love you too, I said, but I was speaking to a quiet line. He had already hung up. I sat very still on my couch. I let the radio play one whole song before I moved again. I was not angry. I was something deeper than angry. I felt like a door had slowly closed that used to be open. I pressed the hem one more time, slow and careful, so my hands would not shake. The next day I went to the bank. I wore my gray sweater and took the paper key from my dresser drawer. The bank was cold, like it always is. The woman at the desk knew me by name. "Good morning, Miss Parker," she said. I nodded. We went to the safe deposit boxes. I turned the key and slid out a thin metal drawer. Inside were the things I had kept for many years, the last letter my husband wrote me, a worn photo of baby Tyler asleep on my chest, and some papers that looked boring to most people but were not boring to me at all. I checked the papers. I asked questions. The woman gave me answers. I signed my name slowly and carefully, the same way I had pressed the hem. "Are you sure?" the woman asked gently, as if she felt the weight of what I was doing. "Yes," I said. "I am sure." When I left the bank, I went to the dollar store and bought a pack of nice envelopes. White, thick, no lines. I also bought a blue pen and a small sheet of gold stars. I knew Liam would like the stars. Kids like shiny things. Grown-ups do, too, sometimes. When I got home, I made tea. I sat at the tiny kitchen table by the window. I thought about what kindness looks like when kindness has been used up and stomped on. Sometimes kindness is soft. Sometimes it is firm. Sometimes it is a wall that will not move. Sometimes it is a gift that tells the truth, even if the truth makes some people cry. That week, I still walked Liam to the library after school when Madison had influencer events. He liked the dinosaur books. He held my hand when we crossed the street. He asked me why the moon seems to follow the car at night. We bought popsicles on the way home and let the purple juice drip down our arms and laughed. In those small moments, I felt strong again. I knew what mattered, but there were other moments, too, hard ones. On Wednesday, I stopped by Tyler's house to drop off a book Liam had left at my apartment. Madison opened the door, looked me up and down, and smiled with her teeth, but not her eyes. "Oh," she said, "you're here." I held up the book. "Just returning this. Liam loves it." She did not take it. "Next time, text first," she said. "We're in the middle of a content shoot." I nodded. I put the book on the porch table and stepped back. "I understand. Tell Liam I love him." She tilted her head. "You know, Evelyn, the party is shaping up to be very high-end. We hired a photographer. The brand is serious about the look. Maybe, just to keep things clean and on message, you can help from the kitchen, like cutting the cake or something. You're great with hands-on things." I kept my face calm. "I hear you," I said. She smiled bigger. "Teamwork." When the door closed, I stood for a long moment on the porch. I looked at the doormat that said, "Welcome, friends." I thought about words and what they mean and what they don't. Back at my apartment, I set the book down and took the envelope from the drawer. I wrote for Liam on the front and put a gold star beside his name. I did not seal it yet. I looked at the things on my table, my blue pen, my tea, a Bible with pages so soft from years of turning that they felt like cloth. I whispered, "Help me be kind and also be strong." Then I sealed the envelope. 2 days before the party, I went to the thrift store again. I found a small silver clip for my hair and a thin bracelet with tiny hearts. The whole thing cost $3. The lady at the register said the bracelet looked sweet on me. I smiled and thanked her. I held on to that small kindness like it was heavier than gold. The night before the party, I baked cookies anyway, not for the dessert table, for the neighbors, for the mailman, for the kids who ride their scooters on the sidewalk and say, "Hi, Miss Parker," when they zoom by. I put the cookies in little bags and tied them with string. I slept well. The morning of the party, the sky was clear and hot. I put on my light blue dress, the one I hemmed. I clipped my hair. I put the bracelet on my wrist. I looked in the mirror. I saw lines on my face and softness in my eyes. I smiled at my reflection like she was an old friend who had stayed for the long fight. I took the bus to Tyler Street and walked the last block. Cars lined the curb. I heard music and children shouting happily. I stepped through the gate and saw a backyard that looked like a magazine. White tents, tall flowers in glass jars, a candy bar, a big table filled with gifts. I saw Madison moving like a queen in a white dress with ruffles. I saw her mother wearing pearls that looked heavy. I saw Tyler laughing with two men I didn't know. Liam saw me first. He ran to me and threw his arms around my waist. "Grandma," he yelled. "You came." "Of course I came," I said, hugging him close. "Happy birthday, baby." Madison crossed the lawn toward us. Smile perfect. A photographer with a big camera followed her like a shadow. "Liam," she sang, "pictures with Nana later. Okay? Right now we're doing the brand setup." Liam looked up at me, confused. "Grandma, you're Nana, right?" "I'm whatever you like," I said softly. "Go have fun, sweetheart." He ran off to the bouncy house. I walked toward the gift table, the envelope warm in my hand. You already know what happened next at that table. You already know what Madison whispered. You know how I smiled at her and said, "Of course," and how I pressed the envelope flat with my palm and walked to the door. I did everything slow and careful, with a quiet that comes from long years of holding in storms so children could sleep through thunder. Now, I will tell you what happened when I stepped outside. At first, there was only the hot air and the sound of a distant lawn mower. I took one step, then another, down the porch steps. I felt light, like a rope I had been pulling on for years had finally slipped from my hands. Then the voices came from inside. "Evelyn, wait." Chairs scraped. Feet ran. The door flew open. "Please come back." I kept walking across the small front yard. I reached the sidewalk. I felt my heart kick like a horse in my chest. I did not turn around. Behind me, another sound rose, the small, fast feet of a child. "Grandma!" Liam shouted, wild and scared. I heard the slap of his shoes on the porch, the thump of his jump to the last step. And then the worst sound of all, the deep, fast growl of an engine. A catering van was turning into the driveway. Too quick, the driver looking back toward the house instead of at the road. Liam dashed off the curb toward me, arms out, face bright with relief, not seeing the van, not hearing Tyler's raw shout. "Liam, stop." Time turned thin. The world narrowed to three things: my grandson, the van, and the space between them. My purse fell from my shoulder and hit the ground. The envelope was inside the house, but my whole heart was out here. I took a step off the curb. The van's brakes screamed. Liam's foot hung in the air, inches above the blacktop. I threw out my arms. And then Everything exploded into motion. A horn, a scream, tires biting the concrete, Madison yelling my name like a prayer she had never believed in until now. I reached for Liam, and the world cut to white. The blare of the horn tore through the air like a scream. I lunged forward, arms wide, heart in my throat. The van's tires screeched, burning black lines into the pavement. Liam froze, his little sneakers hovering above the curb, eyes wide and terrified. I wrapped my arms around him just as the van skidded to a halt. The bumper stopped so close I could see my reflection in the chrome, pale and shaking. My knees buckled, but I held Liam tight against me, shielding him with my body. Gasps erupted behind us. Madison shrieked. Tyler's voice cracked as he called out, "Mom! Liam!" The driver leapt from the van, hands on his head, muttering apologies. I pressed my face against Liam's hair. His heart pounded fast, like a tiny bird trapped in a cage. My own heart answered it beat for beat. "It's okay, baby," I whispered, though my chest felt like it would break. "Grandma's here. You're safe." For a long, endless moment, no one moved. Then Tyler was there, pulling us both into his arms. His face was wet with tears. "You saved him, Mom. You saved my boy." Behind him, Madison stood stiff, her hands trembling as she tried to fix her smile for the crowd of guests who had spilled out onto the porch. Cameras dangled forgotten from their necks. The perfect party had cracked wide open. And that was when I saw it, the way Madison's eyes darted toward the house, toward the gift table, toward the envelope I had left behind. A ripple of panic crossed her face. I knew then she wasn't worried about me. She wasn't even worried about Liam. She was worried about what I had placed on that table. Tyler helped me up, his hand firm on my arm. "Come back inside, Mom," he pleaded. "Please. Everyone's waiting. Liam needs his grandma." The crowd behind him murmured in agreement, some with shame on their faces, others with curiosity burning in their eyes. But I didn't move. I just looked at Madison, standing there with her perfect curls and her painted smile slipping, and I thought about every moment she had made me feel small, every time she had shut me out of my own family. She wanted me in the kitchen, out of sight, out of mind. Now she wanted me back. And it wasn't just because of Liam. It was because of that envelope. The same envelope I had pressed flat on the table before walking out. The same envelope that held something far heavier than paper. I adjusted Liam on my hip, still holding him close, and took a deep breath. This wasn't just about a birthday party anymore. This was about respect, about truth, about revenge served quiet and cold. I turned toward the front gate, my grip firm on my grandson, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the summer air. "I'll come back when I'm ready," I said, "not when I'm told." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tyler froze. Madison's mouth fell open. And in that silence, the question burned in every single face. What was in that envelope? They didn't know yet, but they would. And when they did, nothing in their lives would ever be the same again. The yard was still buzzing with whispers when I started walking toward the gate. Liam clung to me, his small arms wrapped tight around my neck, and I could feel his little body trembling. I rubbed his back slowly to calm him. His trust in me was unshaken, even when the adults around us looked at me like I had just shifted the whole earth beneath their feet. Tyler followed close, his hand hovering as if he was afraid I'd slip away. "Mom, please," he begged in a low voice. "Come inside. Just for Liam." His eyes darted toward Madison, who was standing frozen in the middle of the lawn, her face pale, but her jaw tight. I stopped at the gate, turning to face him. "Tyler," I said softly, "do you remember the nights when you were little and you had that cough that wouldn't stop? Who sat by your bed? Who rubbed your back until you fell asleep?" He blinked, confused. You did, Mom. And when your dad died, who worked double shifts so you could still go to soccer camp that summer? His lips parted, his eyes shining. You. Then tell me, son, I said, my voice steady. Why does your wife think I embarrass this family? Why do you let her? His face crumpled with shame. He looked at the ground, words trapped in his throat. He had no answer. Behind him, the crowd of guests shifted uneasily. Some looked away, suddenly interested in their shoes or the balloons swaying above the tables. But others stared straight at Madison, their faces twisted with disgust. A whisper ran through them, like wind rustling through dry leaves. Madison caught it. She lifted her chin, forcing a laugh. "Oh, come on," she said, her voice too loud, too bright. "It was just a misunderstanding. Evelyn, you know I didn't mean it like that." But the crack in her mask was showing. She was rattled, and she knew it. I didn't respond. Instead, I shifted Liam gently onto the ground, kneeling so we were eye to eye. His small hands cupped my cheeks. "Grandma, don't go," he whispered. "I want you here." That nearly broke me. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. I kissed his forehead. "I'll always be with you, baby, no matter where I stand." The less extreme moment came when I finally straightened up and let Tyler lead me back toward the porch, not into the house, but to a bench near the door. I sat quietly, Liam pressed against my side, while the party slowly resumed in the backyard. Kids ran to the magician, balloons floated, and the music started up again, though the cheer in the air was thinner, strained. People kept stealing glances at me, whispering to one another. I could feel Madison's eyes on me too, sharp and cold as knives. She wanted me hidden. She wanted me gone. But now everyone had seen the truth crack open, even if they didn't know the whole of it yet. And that envelope, the envelope still sat on the gift table, untouched. I noticed Madison's mother hover near it more than once, her hand twitching like she wanted to slide it away, out of sight. But every time she tried, a guest walked by, or the photographer snapped another picture. It stayed right where I had left it, white against the mountain of shiny paper and bows. That's when I knew I had won the first small battle. But the real war hadn't even begun, because inside that envelope was not just a birthday card. It was a key to everything Madison thought she owned, everything she thought she controlled. And when the moment came for Liam to open his gifts, that key would tear their perfect little world apart. The party stumbled along, but it was no longer the same. The laughter sounded thinner, stretched too tight, like a rubber band about to snap. The kids still screamed with joy at the magician pulling rabbits from hats, but the adults, they couldn't stop glancing at me. I sat calmly on that porch bench, Liam curled against my side, his head heavy on my shoulder. His little breaths steadied me. He was happy I was there, and that was all I needed in that moment. But I could feel the weight of the tension swirling like a storm no one could control. Madison was restless. She kept pacing back and forth, her heels clicking sharp against the patio stones. She was smiling too hard, hugging her guests too tightly, and waving her hands like everything was fine. But her eyes, they always flicked back to that table with the pile of gifts, that table with one white envelope lying flat on top. I watched her mother drift closer again, standing there with a glass of wine. She didn't drink. Her hand twitched as though she might snatch the envelope and slip it into her purse. But then Tyler's boss strolled by and patted her shoulder, and she laughed a little too loud, backing away without touching a thing. It was only a matter of time. When the magician finished his show, Madison clapped her hands together and called out, "Time for gifts." Her voice rang sharp, too cheerful. She motioned for Liam to sit at the head of the long table, the camera flashing and rolling. The children gathered around, bouncing with excitement, while the adults leaned in closer. I could see Madison sweating now, though her smile didn't fade. She didn't want this moment, but she couldn't stop it either. One by one, Liam tore open boxes with toy cars, action figures, and Lego sets. He squealed with joy, thanking everyone as best as a 7-year-old could. Every time he reached for another, Madison's eyes darted nervously toward that white envelope, her fingers twitching at her side. And then it happened. Liam's little hands landed right on it. The envelope with his name and the gold star shining bright. The entire backyard went silent. Even the kids stopped talking, sensing something bigger was happening. Madison froze, her smile stiff as porcelain. Tyler shifted on his feet, glancing between his wife and me. The photographer crouched lower, his camera clicking nonstop, desperate not to miss a second. Liam grinned, holding the envelope high in the air. "This one's from Grandma," he shouted, his voice full of pride. "The best one's always from Grandma." The words hit Madison like a slap. Her face twitched, and for the first time all day, her perfect mask cracked in front of everyone. He tore the envelope open with both hands. The flap ripped. A hush fell so deep that even the birds seemed to stop singing. And then Liam pulled it out. Not just a card, but a set of folded papers. Official, heavy, stamped. He blinked, confused. "What's this?" I stayed silent, my hands folded neatly in my lap. My heart was steady. The adults leaned forward, their curiosity burning hot. Madison's mother let out a soft gasp, her hand covering her mouth. Tyler reached for the papers, his eyes wide. But before he could read them aloud, Madison lunged across the table and snatched them from Liam's hands. Her voice was sharp, desperate, breaking. "No, this isn't the time for—" Too late. The guests had already seen the bold heading across the top. "Last will and testament of Evelyn Parker." Gasps erupted. People whispered. Their eyes darting between me and Madison, confusion painted across every face. Tyler froze, staring at his wife, then down at the words in her hands. I simply sat there, calm as the eye of the storm, while Madison trembled in front of everyone. Because now the truth had begun to claw its way out, and there was no way to stop it. The yard buzzed with 100 whispers. Guests leaned toward each other, hands cupped over mouths, eyes wide as they stared at Madison gripping those papers like her life depended on it. Tyler's face was pale, his jaw tight. He reached for the will again, his voice low but firm. "Madison, give me the papers." But she clutched them to her chest, her hands shaking so badly the pages crumpled. "This isn't the time," she snapped, her fake smile wobbling. "It's Liam's birthday, for God's sake." A heavy silence followed her words. For the first time that day, the guests didn't look at me with pity. They looked at her with suspicion, with judgment. I didn't move. I didn't even speak. I let her stew in the silence. That was my revenge. The calmness of someone who already knew the ending to the story everyone else was just starting to read. Finally, Tyler stepped forward, his voice sharper now. "Madison, hand them over." Her lips pressed thin, but she had no choice. The eyes of 20 people burned into her skin. Slowly, reluctantly, she let go, and Tyler unfolded the will with trembling fingers. He scanned the first lines, his brow furrowing. "Mom," he whispered, disbelief in his voice. "This says—" But before he could finish, Madison rushed forward, yanking the microphone from the DJ's table. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice booming, desperate, "please ignore this. It's just old paperwork. Nothing important. Let's get back to the party." Her laugh was brittle, sharp enough to cut glass. But it was too late. The guests weren't laughing. They weren't clapping. Their eyes were fixed on Tyler, on the bold letters across the top of the will, on me sitting silently on the porch bench with Liam's small hand wrapped tightly in mine. Madison's voice faltered. It's nothing. And then, from the crowd, someone spoke what everyone else was thinking. Nothing, a woman said, folding her arms. That looks like a will. Gasps again. Heads nodded. A man muttered, why would Evelyn bring her will to her grandson's birthday? Another whispered, because maybe it's not just her will. Maybe it's about them. The whispers grew louder, circling like wolves. Madison's face drained of color. Tyler's hands shook as he turned another page. And I just sat there, my lips curved in the smallest smile. Because they were right. It wasn't just a will. It was a reckoning. And Madison knew it. Her perfect world. The world she had built on appearances, on shutting me out, on calling me an embarrassment, was beginning to crack wide open. But no one yet knew what those papers said. No one knew just how deep the knife would cut. And that was the beauty of it. The storm hadn't even landed yet. Tyler stood frozen in the middle of the yard, the papers trembling in his hands. The silence was so thick you could almost hear the balloons brushing against each other in the breeze. Every eye was locked on him, waiting for the words that would either smooth over the awkwardness or split the day wide open. Madison's heels clicked as she stormed forward, her smile long gone now. She grabbed his wrist, hissing under her breath, don't read it. Not here. Not in front of them. But Tyler shook her off, his jaw tightening. For once, the boy who had always tried to please everyone, his boss, his wife, even strangers, looked like a man who had hit his breaking point. Mom put this here for a reason, he said, his voice loud enough for the guests to hear. He glanced at me on the porch, then back at the papers. She wanted us to see it. A ripple of tension rolled through the crowd. People leaned in closer, some with hands clasped as if they were about to witness a sermon. Madison's face was pale, her breath shallow. Tyler read aloud. To my grandson Liam Parker, I leave the bulk of my estate, including savings stocks and the deed to the property at 421 Maple Street. Gasps cut through the air. Madison staggered, clutching the edge of the table to keep from falling. Her mother let out a strangled cry, covering her mouth. Tyler kept reading, his voice shaking. I make this choice with a clear mind and a full heart because he is my blood, my joy, and my legacy. May this serve as a reminder that love and loyalty mean more than appearances, titles, or wealth. The words hung heavy, slicing through the party like a knife. Someone in the back muttered, she left everything to her grandson. Another voice added, not to her son, not to Madison, just Liam. The murmurs grew louder, mixing with the sound of Madison's ragged breathing. She lunged forward, snatching the papers from Tyler's hands. This is ridiculous, she shouted, her voice cracking. She's just trying to embarrass us. She has nothing. She lives in a tiny apartment above a bakery. Her outburst only made it worse. The guests weren't fooled. They stared at her the way people stare at a mask that's finally slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. I stayed seated on the bench, my hand resting on Liam's shoulder. He was too young to understand the weight of what had just happened, but he could feel it. His small fingers squeezed mine, his eyes darting between his parents. Tyler turned slowly toward his wife. You knew she had money, didn't you? His voice was low, dangerous. That's why you wanted her out of sight today. That's why you've been... He stopped himself, shaking his head, as if the puzzle pieces were finally sliding into place. Madison's lips trembled. No, I didn't know. But no one believed her. The party had shifted completely. It wasn't balloons and cake anymore. It was a courtroom without a judge, and Madison stood on trial in front of everyone. And I was silent, calm, because this was only the beginning. What none of them knew yet What even Tyler hadn't realized was that the will was only the first gift. The envelope was heavier than it looked because tucked inside were two more documents. And when those came to light, the real storm would break. The whispers swirled hotter than the summer air. Madison clutched the will against her chest, her eyes wild, but it was useless. Everyone had seen enough. They knew I wasn't some frail old woman to be shoved into the kitchen like an afterthought. Tyler's voice cut through the noise. "Mom," he said, turning toward me, is this real?" I didn't answer right away. I just met his eyes, steady and calm, the way I had when he was a boy, and came home with skinned knees, desperate for reassurance. Slowly, I nodded. "It's real." The crowd let out a collective gasp. A few guests exchanged wide-eyed looks, and one woman actually whispered, "She's been sitting on a fortune this whole time." Madison's face drained of color. She turned, desperate now, shouting at the guests, "This is none of your business. Everyone, please, just go back to the party. Eat cake. The magician will do another show." But no one moved. No one laughed. They were riveted, because if her mother had come, it meant there was still a chance, a way to claw back control. But it also meant she was about to face the only person who could make her shame feel even worse. The visitation room smelled of bleach and stale coffee. A scratched plexiglass divider ran down the middle, smudged with fingerprints and faint lipstick marks from the countless desperate conversations that had taken place there. Madison sat on the metal stool, her hands trembling as she picked up the greasy receiver. Across from her, her mother sat rigid in her pearls and pressed blouse, as if the county jail were just another charity gala she had been forced to attend. For a long moment, neither spoke. Madison's mascara-streaked face reflected back in the glass, a sharp reminder of how far she had fallen in just one afternoon. Finally, her mother leaned forward, her voice icy. "Do you realize what you've done?" Madison's throat tightened. "Mother." "No." The older woman's eyes burned. "I told you Evelyn was dangerous. I told you she wasn't to be underestimated. But you—" She shook her head, lips curling in disgust. "You thought you could humiliate her, and now look where you are." Tears welled in Madison's eyes, but rage quickly chased them away. "This is her fault. That old woman set me up. She planned this. She wanted to destroy me." Her mother let out a bitter laugh. "Destroy you? Madison, you destroyed yourself. You left a trail of forged signatures and stolen funds. Do you really think people won't believe Evelyn when she has every piece of evidence in her hand?" Madison's fingers clenched the receiver, so hard her knuckles turned white. "She humiliated me in front of everyone. In front of Tyler. In front of Liam." Her voice cracked. He ran to her mother. He chose her. For the first time, her mother's sharp expression softened, but only slightly. She leaned closer, her voice low and cutting. "If you want to survive this, you need to stop crying about what's been taken from you and start planning how to take it back." Madison's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Her mother glanced around, lowering her voice further. "You're not ruined yet. Tyler may be furious now, but he's weak. He needs stability. You've built his life for him. He doesn't know how to stand without you. And Liam? He's just a child. Children forget fast. You can make him turn back to you if you play it right." Madison swallowed hard. "And Evelyn?" Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "Evelyn is old. Time is against her. If she wants a war, you give her one. But you don't fight with rage. You fight with strategy." The words slithered into Madison's ears like venom. She straightened her back, the fire returning to her eyes. "You're right. I won't let her win. I'll make everyone see her for what she really is, a bitter old woman trying to ruin her son's family." Her mother nodded approvingly. That's the daughter I raised. Do not beg. Do not cry. Turn the story. That is how you survive. Madison lifted her chin, her broken appearance slowly hardening into something sharper, colder. She thinks she's won. But when I'm out of here, I'll make her regret ever crossing me. The guard tapped the glass, signaling the end of their time. Madison hung up the receiver slowly, her reflection in the plexiglass no longer pathetic, but dangerous. As she was escorted back to her cell, one thought pulsed in her mind like a drumbeat. Evelyn Parker started this war, but I'll be the one to finish it. Back at the house, the aftermath of the party lingered like smoke after a fire. The guests had all gone home, leaving behind half-empty cups, sagging balloons, and a cake no one had touched. The lawn looked less like the site of a celebration, and more like the ruins of a battle. Tyler moved slowly through the mess, his shoulders heavy, gathering paper plates and crumpled napkins like he needed to keep his hands busy. He hadn't spoken much since the police car pulled away. His silence was its own confession. He knew he had failed. I sat at the kitchen table with Liam in my lap. He was quiet, his small hands busy picking at the corner of a balloon ribbon, his young mind trying to process things too big for him. Every so often, he looked up at me, his eyes full of questions he didn't know how to ask. "Grandma," he whispered finally, "is Mommy coming back?" The words stabbed me, but I smoothed his hair and answered softly, "Not tonight, sweetheart, but you're safe. You're always safe with me." He nodded slowly, resting his head against my chest. I rocked him gently, the same way I had rocked Tyler when he was small. And for the first time in years, I felt like my family was in my arms again, even if it was broken. Tyler came in then, standing in the doorway, his face pale and drawn. He stared at me holding his son, and his lips trembled. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "I don't know how to fix this." I looked at him steadily. "You start by telling the truth. To yourself, to Liam, to me. No more silence. No more excuses." He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. "I let her control everything. I let her push you out because I didn't want to fight. And now it's cost me my marriage, my pride, my son's safety. You still have your son," I reminded him gently, rocking Liam as he drifted towards sleep. "And you still have a chance to do better." Tyler sank into the chair across from me, burying his face in his hands. For a long while, we just sat there, me holding Liam, him drowning in the weight of his mistakes. But even in the quiet, I could feel it. The storm wasn't over. Madison was out there, her pride wounded, her mask shattered, but her fire still burning. And she would not go down quietly. As if on cue, Tyler's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, his brow furrowing when he saw the notification. Then his face went white. "What is it?" I asked, my voice low. He turned the screen toward me, his hands shaking. It was a social media post. Madison's account. The caption read, "Betrayed, set up by a jealous old woman who never wanted me in this family. I will prove my innocence. The truth will come out." And beneath it, a picture, taken at the party, of me walking toward the door with my envelope in hand, a freeze frame that made me look cold, secretive, calculating. Already, thousands of comments flooded in. Some called Madison a liar. Others defended her. The war had moved online, where lies spread like wildfire. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Madison wasn't waiting for trial. She was rewriting the story in real time. And this war was only getting uglier. Madison didn't waste a second. From her mother's polished living room, she turned her bail release into a stage. She sat in front of a ring light, her face scrubbed clean of tears and mascara, dressed in a soft cardigan instead of her ruined white party dress. She looked every bit the wounded wife, the betrayed mother. The live stream began, and thousands of people tuned in. Her voice was calm, broken in all the right places. I was humiliated on my son's birthday, she said, her eyes glistening. Not because I did anything wrong, but because my husband's mother, an old woman who has never liked me, plotted to destroy me. She planted papers. She twisted stories. And she ripped me from my own child's life. For the first time in years, she was alone. And I knew that was only the beginning, because humiliation in front of her friends, her neighbors, and her sponsors was one thing. But the law was another. The documents in Tyler's hands weren't just paper. They were evidence. And Madison knew it. Her scream shattered the air. "You'll regret this. Evelyn," she shrieked, her finger stabbing toward me. "You'll all regret this." But her words rang hollow, trembling, stripped of their power, because the truth was already out, and there was no taking it back. The party that had begun with balloons and cake had become her public trial, and the verdict was clear. The yard was a battlefield of silence and whispers, the kind of silence that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. The balloons bobbed in the breeze, but no one cared about cake, gifts, or photographs anymore. All eyes were locked on Madison. She crouched in the grass, her once perfect white dress stained with dirt, her mascara smeared, her breath ragged. The queen of appearances had lost her crown, and everyone saw it. But humiliation wasn't enough for her. Not Madison. Her eyes flicked around like a trapped animal, darting from the deed in Tyler's hand to the yard was still. Silent. Not the good kind of silence, the heavy kind, the kind that wraps around your neck and squeezes. Even the children had stopped laughing. They stood near the magician, clutching half-deflated balloons, staring with wide eyes at the scene unraveling before them. Madison was on her knees now, her hair wild, her white dress torn at the hem. Tyler stood over her, chest heaving, his knuckles white as he clenched the damning papers in his hands. The neighbors, friends, co-workers, everyone who had once admired Madison's glossy perfection, looked at her now with pity, disgust, or both. I stayed by the porch, Liam pressed close to my side, his small hand gripping mine like an anchor. I rubbed his shoulder, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Grandma's here." But my eyes never left Madison. Then Tyler moved. His hand went to his pocket, and when he pulled it out, his phone was in his palm. The crowd gasped. Madison froze, her eyes snapping to his hand. "No," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Don't you dare." Tyler's thumb hovered over the screen. His face was pale, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "You forged my name. You stole from our accounts. You endangered our son's future. This isn't just about us anymore, Madison. It's about the law." Madison let out a strangled laugh, shrill and broken. The law won't believe her." She jabbed a finger at me, her voice rising to a scream. "She's just an old woman living in a shoebox over a bakery. You think anyone's going to listen to her?" But her words didn't land. Not this time. The guests had seen too much. They had heard Tyler read the documents, seen her lunge at me, watched her crumble. She was naked in her lies now, and everyone knew it. Tyler hit the call button. 911, he said into the phone, his voice trembling but firm. "I need to report fraud and forgery, and I need officers at my address immediately." The yard erupted. Some guests gasped. Others muttered, "Good for him," or "It's about time." Madison screamed, lunging forward, trying to grab the phone, but two men from the crowd stepped in, holding her back. She kicked, thrashed, cursed, but she was trapped. I held Liam tighter, my eyes never leaving her. My revenge wasn't about shouting. It wasn't about fighting. It was about letting the truth drag her down, the same way she had tried to drag me. Minutes later, the faint wail of sirens cut through the summer air. The sound grew louder, sharper, closer. Madison froze again, her body trembling, her eyes darting wildly like a cornered animal. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Not here. Not in front of everyone. But yes, here. In front of everyone." Two squad cars pulled up to the curb, their red and blue lights flashing across the neatly decorated yard. The guests parted like the Red Sea, every phone raised now, recording the moment that would replay again and again long after the cake had gone stale. The officers stepped out, their hands resting on their belts, eyes scanning the tense scene. Tyler moved forward, handing them the documents with shaking hands. "It's all here," he said, his voice rough. "The will, the deed, the proof of fraud." Madison tried one last time, her voice breaking into sobs. "Please, Tyler, don't do this. Think of Liam. Think of us." But Tyler only shook his head, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I am thinking of Liam. That's why this ends today." The officers nodded, reading quickly through the papers. Then one turned to Madison. "Ma'am, we need you to stand up. You're under investigation for fraud and forgery. Please place your hands behind your back." Gasps rang out. Madison screamed, falling to her knees, shaking her head violently. "No, not here. Not in front of them." But it didn't matter. The cuffs clicked around her wrists, the sound echoing through the backyard, louder than the sirens themselves. The perfect life she had built on lies, cruelty, and appearances had crumbled in the same yard she once used to humiliate me. And this was only the beginning of her fall. The red and blue lights painted the whole yard in harsh colors, flashing against the balloons, the gift table, the faces of stunned guests. The music had been cut off long ago, and now the only sounds were the low murmur of neighbors and the soft click of the cuffs locking into place. Madison was no longer the polished hostess in her white designer dress. She was a woman on her knees, her wrists bound behind her back, her mascara running down her cheeks like black rivers. "Please," she begged, her voice raw. "Don't do this. Not in front of everyone. Tyler, think of Liam." Tyler stood frozen, his face pale, his fists clenched. He didn't move to help her. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he turned toward me. For the first time in years, I saw my son truly see me, not as someone to be hidden away, not as a burden, but as the mother who had held him up when no one else would. His voice broke. "I'm sorry, Mom." I nodded, "Steady. Don't be sorry, son. Just be better." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the guests. Some had tears in their eyes. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Every single one of them was recording, their phones raised, capturing the exact moment Madison Parker's perfect image crumbled into dust. The officers pulled her to her feet. She thrashed once, screaming, "This isn't over. You'll regret this, Evelyn." Her voice cracked, desperation and rage tangled together. But the officers held her firm, walking her across the yard. The sight was surreal, her heels sinking into the grass, her once proud chin trembling as neighbors whispered harsh words. "Fraud. Thief. Liar." The children clutched their parents' hands, wide-eyed, as Madison was led to the squad car parked out front. Liam buried his face in my side, trembling. I stroked his hair and whispered, "It's okay, baby. The truth always wins in the end." The car door opened, and the officers guided Madison inside. Her screams grew shriller, bouncing off the quiet houses on the street. "Tyler, don't let them take me. You need me. I'm your wife." Tyler's voice was hollow when he answered, "No, Madison. I needed a partner, not a betrayer." The doors slammed shut, cutting her off. The sound rang out like the final gavel of a judge. The squad car pulled away slowly, its lights flashing against the fading afternoon sky. The entire neighborhood stood frozen, watching the woman who had once held herself above everyone else disappear in the back seat of a police car. And then silence. The party decorations hung limp. The cake melted in the sun. No one moved. Finally, one of the guests spoke up, their voice shaking. Well, I guess we all know who the real embarrassment was. Laughter broke out. Not loud, not cruel, but sharp, bitter, and final. Madison's name was now a punchline. I sat back on the bench, Liam still in my arms, and let out a long breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My heart was heavy, but steady. My revenge was never about destroying her. It was about revealing her, about showing the world and my own son what she really was. And now they all knew. But this was not the end, because Madison wasn't the only one who had failed me. Tyler had failed me too. And before this story was finished, he would have to face the truth as well. The flashing lights faded down the street until they disappeared completely, leaving behind a silence so heavy it pressed on everyone's chest. The party was finished. Balloons bobbed in the still air like ghosts of a celebration that had died too soon. The cake sat untouched, the candles never lit, but the real weight sat on Tyler's shoulders. He stood in the middle of the yard, the damning papers still clutched in his hands, staring at the ground as though it might swallow him whole. Guests whispered around him, some patting his back, others shaking their heads. But his eyes kept drifting to me sitting steady on the porch bench, Liam pressed into my side. Finally, he moved. His steps were slow, heavy as he crossed the lawn toward me. His lips parted, his voice hoarse. "Mom." I raised my eyes to his, calm, unflinching. "Yes, Tyler?" He dropped to his knees in front of me, the papers spilling onto the grass. His hands trembled as he reached for mine, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I've been blind. I let her treat you like you didn't matter. I didn't protect you. I didn't even see what was right in front of me." My heart twisted. For years, I had dreamed of hearing those words. But forgiveness isn't always instant. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it has to be earned. I pulled my hands back slowly, resting them instead on Liam's small shoulders. "You let her cut me out of your life, Tyler. You let her whisper that I was an embarrassment. And you believed her." Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I didn't believe her. I just didn't want to fight. I thought keeping the peace was better." I shook my head. Peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's surrender. The crowd had gone quiet again, watching this private moment unfold in the ruins of Madison's party. Even the children sensed something larger than themselves was happening. Tyler's shoulders sagged. What do I do now? I looked at Liam, who was watching his father with wide, worried eyes. Then I looked back at Tyler. You start by being the father your son deserves. Honest, brave, loyal, and you start by admitting you failed me too. His voice cracked. "I failed you, Mom. I failed my own son. I let her lies blind me." He pressed his palms into his eyes, sobbing openly now, no longer caring about the guests watching. "I don't know how to fix this." I leaned forward slightly, my voice firm but not cruel. "You can't fix everything at once. But you can start by choosing truth over appearances. Every time, no matter the cost." For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of his broken breathing and the murmur of the guests. And then, slowly, Tyler nodded. His face was red, his eyes swollen, but there was something new in them. Resolve. A spark of the boy I once raised, who used to run home with scraped knees and say, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll try again tomorrow." He wiped his face and stood, squaring his shoulders. "You're right. It ends here. With Madison. With me." The crowd murmured again, some nodding in approval. But I knew this wasn't the end, because while Tyler was finally waking up, Madison was not finished. Far from it. That night, in the cold walls of the county jail, she would sit in her cell, her mind racing, her pride bleeding, and she would make a choice. not to repent, but to strike back. The storm wasn't over. It was only gathering again. The county jail was nothing like the world Madison was used to. No chandeliers, no pearl necklaces, no cameras flashing at her smile. Just a cold steel bench, gray walls, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights that made her head pound. She sat hunched in the corner of her cell, her white dress now wrinkled and stained, her hair matted with sweat. The makeup that once gave her the look of perfection was gone, replaced by streaks of black under her eyes. She looked less like the glamorous hostess of the day, and more like the truth she had fought to bury, desperate, broken, ordinary. But humiliation alone would never tame Madison. She paced back and forth across the cell, her heels long since taken from her, her bare feet slapping against the concrete. Rage bubbled in her chest, hotter than any shame. Every time she blinked, she saw Evelyn, calm, steady Evelyn, sitting on that porch bench, holding Liam like a queen holding her heir, while Madison's world fell apart around her. Her fists clenched. That old witch thinks she's won, she muttered under her breath, her voice trembling with fury. But she hasn't. She hasn't. Another woman in the cell, a tired-looking inmate with a scar down her cheek, smirked. Talking to yourself, already? Won't last long in here if you can't handle a night. Madison spun, eyes blazing. You don't know me. The woman leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. I don't need to. You reek of pride, the kind that snaps when it breaks. Madison bit down hard on her lip, forcing herself to stay quiet. She sat back on the bench, her mind spinning. She thought of Tyler, his face when he read the papers, the way he looked at her like she was a stranger, the way he let those officers drag her away without lifting a finger. She thought of Liam, sweet, innocent Liam, clinging to Evelyn as though she were his real mother. Madison's nails dug into her palms. He's my son, she hissed, so low only she could hear it. Mine, not hers. But the more she tried to convince herself, the louder Evelyn's calm words echoed in her head. You call it what it is. Fraud, theft, betrayal, and then you call the police. Humiliation boiled into obsession. She would not rot in here. She would not let Evelyn win. No, she would fight. She would twist this story, turn it inside out until she came out the victim. She would smear Evelyn's name, even if it meant dragging Tyler down with her. And most of all, she would find a way to get Liam back. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. This isn't the end, she whispered, her voice sharp, dark. It's only the beginning. Evelyn Parker will regret crossing me. Outside her cell, the echo of footsteps drew closer, heavy and sure. A guard stopped at her bars, tapping the metal with his baton. Visitor, he barked. Madison's head snapped up. Her eyes narrowed. Who? The guard smirked. Your mother. Her stomach twisted. Relief and dread tangled together. Tyler's hands shook as he reached for the crumpled envelope still lying on the table. When he slid the papers back in, something unexpected slipped halfway out. A second folded document. The air froze again. What's that? Someone asked. Madison lunged, but Tyler was quicker. He pulled it free and unfolded it, his eyes scanning the bold letters at the top. His lips moved silently before he finally whispered, This is the deed. He looked up at me, his face pale. Mom, you own this house? Gasps exploded from the crowd. Madison's knees buckled, and she dropped into a chair, her hands gripping the edges like she might faint. Her mother staggered forward, her pearls clinking against each other. That's impossible. This house is ours, Madison and Tyler's. We bought it. I tilted my head, still calm. No, I said softly, but my voice carried. I bought it years ago with what your daughter never thought I had. When Tyler wanted a home for his family, I let him live here. I stayed silent, let Madison pretend she had built this life. I let her have her show. The crowd erupted again, their shock spilling into low murmurs. Tyler dropped the deed, as if it burned him, his face contorted with shame. Madison shot to her feet, her voice cracking. "You're lying. She's lying." But she wasn't shouting at me. She was shouting at everyone else, because she knew, deep down, she knew the truth was written in black ink on that page. And she also knew one more thing. The envelope wasn't empty yet, because nestled between the will and the deed was a third document, one that would not just shame her, one that would ruin her. I stayed silent, my hand steady on Liam's shoulder, my smile soft but sharp enough to slice. The party wasn't a party anymore. It was a reckoning, and the worst was yet to come. Madison's hands shook as she tried to gather herself, the weight of the whispers closing in on her from all sides. The pearls around her mother's neck rattled as the older woman hissed in her ear. "Fix this, Madison. Do something before you lose everything." But there was no fixing it. Not anymore. Tyler bent down and picked the deed back up, staring at it like it was written in fire. "All these years," he said, his voice raw, "you owned this house and you never told me?" "I was waiting for the right time," I answered calmly, keeping my gaze steady. "But when your wife told me I embarrassed this family, I realized the right time had finally come." Gasps rippled again. Madison's mask shattered completely. "You're doing this to humiliate me," she shouted, jabbing a finger at me, her voice cracking in front of the whole crowd. "You waited for my son's birthday to make a fool out of me." "No," I cut in sharply, my voice slicing through hers like glass. "I waited for your son's birthday to show him what real family looks like. Love, loyalty, truth, not lies and appearances." The crowd erupted into murmurs again, and this time they weren't hiding their disdain. Eyes that once admired Madison's perfect curls and polished nails now burned with judgment. Tyler pressed a hand over his mouth, his shoulders trembling. He looked like a man seeing his marriage unravel in real time. Then, as he reached to slip the deed back into the envelope, another paper slid halfway out. The third document. The air grew still. A guest whispered, "There's more." Madison's entire body went rigid. Her eyes locked on the envelope like it was a ticking bomb. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "No, that's nothing. Just more junk." But her voice wavered, and everyone heard it. Tyler's hand hesitated. His eyes darted to me, searching, begging for the truth. I said nothing, only gave him a single nod, the kind of nod a mother gives when it's time for her child to face what he's been avoiding. With trembling fingers, he pulled it out, slowly unfolded it. His eyes widened, his lips parting as if the ground had just split beneath his feet. "What is it?" someone called out. Tyler swallowed hard, his voice hollow, when he finally read the title aloud. "Power of Attorney, Madison Parker." A gasp louder than any before rolled through the crowd, like thunder. Madison's face drained of blood. She lunged at Tyler, screaming, "Stop, don't read it," but two guests stepped between them, holding her back. Tyler's eyes scanned the page, his face crumbling as he read. His voice broke when he spoke again. "This says you've been moving money. From my accounts. From Liam's college fund. You signed my name." His voice cracked. "You've been stealing from us." The crowd erupted. Shouts of disbelief, gasps, and angry mutters filled the air. Madison screamed over them. "It's not true. She planted this. She's lying." But no one believed her anymore. She wasn't just exposed. She was finished. And I sat back on that porch bench, Liam still pressed close to me, his little hand clutching mine. And I let the storm I had started tear through every false wall Madison had built. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice, and it had only just begun. The backyard was chaos now. Guests no longer whispered behind polite smiles. They spoke openly, their voices sharp, disgust dripping from every word. I knew she was fake. All that showing off online. And she was stealing from her own family? Madison spun in circles, her arms flailing as if she could swat away the truth itself. No, no, it's not what it looks like, she shrieked, her hair falling out of place, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. The perfect queen of the party was crumbling into dust before everyone's eyes. Tyler stood frozen, the paper shaking in his hands. His eyes were glassy, his lips moving but no sound coming out. He looked at Madison like he didn't even recognize her. "Tyler, please," Madison begged, her voice cracking. She dropped to her knees right there in the grass, clutching at his pant leg. "I did it for us. For our future. You don't understand. Your mom is twisting this." But Tyler pulled back from her grasp like her touch burned. "For us," he choked out, his voice low and broken. "Or for you." The crowd murmured again, the sound like a rising tide. Madison's mother tried to rush forward, but even she was stopped by the weight of judgment in the air. Every face turned on them now. I stayed silent, still seated on the porch bench with Liam tucked against me. His little brow was furrowed, confusion in his eyes. I smoothed his hair gently and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Grown-ups make mistakes. Sometimes big ones." Tyler sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands. His shoulders shook once, twice, then stilled. He looked up, his jaw tight, his voice suddenly hard. "How long?" he asked, glaring at Madison. "How long have you been stealing from me? From Liam?" Madison shook her head wildly. "No, I didn't. I only borrowed." "Borrowed," he thundered, standing so fast his chair toppled over. "You forged my signature, Madison. You drained accounts. That's not borrowing, that's betrayal." The crowd gasped, and a few people muttered words like fraud and jail. Madison scrambled backward, falling onto her hands. Her eyes darted around, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her. But no one moved. No one spoke for her. The comments flew fast. "Stay strong, Queen." "Mother-in-laws are always jealous." "Praying for you and your son." Madison leaned closer to the camera, her voice trembling. "I'm not perfect, but I am a mother, and everything I did for my family. I will fight to prove my innocence. I will fight for my son." It was perfect theater, and it worked. Her following ballooned overnight. Hashtags trended. Strangers painted her as a victim, while the quiet grandmother was dragged through the mud as a bitter old woman trying to steal her grandson. At my kitchen table, I scrolled through the posts, my hands steady, though my chest ached. Tyler stood over my shoulder, pale with fury. "She's lying to the world, Mom. People believe her. They don't even know the truth." I set the phone down and looked at him. "Then we give them the truth. Not with shouting, not with lies, with proof." And that was when my quiet counterstrike began. The very same envelope Madison had tried to twist into a weapon still sat on the table. Inside it weren't just the will, the deed, and the power of attorney. There were bank records, screenshots, emails, every piece of evidence she thought she had buried. I had spent years collecting them, not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew one day her cruelty would leave me no choice. And now the day had come. Tyler and I met with an attorney the next morning. By the afternoon, a press statement was drafted. By evening, the truth was live. Copies of the documents, notarized and time-stamped, shared across every platform. The internet, so quick to crown Madison a saint, turned on her like a pack of wolves. The comments flipped. She forged signatures? So she did steal? She almost fooled us. And then came the knockout blow. The final video, security camera footage from the bank, showing Madison walking in with forged papers in hand. No amount of ring lights or cardigans could erase that. Her world collapsed in real time. Sponsors cut ties. Supporters vanished. The same strangers who had once called her Queen now spat her name like poison. And in the quiet of my home, with Liam curled against me and Tyler sitting across the table, hollow-eyed but awake at last, I whispered the words that had carried me through every storm. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand. Madison had shouted, screamed, lied, performed, but in the end, the truth stood taller than her lies. And I had my revenge, quiet, steady, and final. Because Madison had wanted me hidden in the kitchen, forgotten. But now the world knew. I was not the embarrassment. She was. And that truth would outlive every lie she ever tried to tell.